flexible, right? As soon as I started to get going here, that computer decided to take a nap. So that's why I switched. Let me just mute this. I'll be right back. Okay. So we have a fantastic speaker for you today. He'll be introduced momentarily. So here, I'll go over there, but I'll figure that out. Just a few housekeeping things. If you need the restroom during the presentation, if you go out the door to your left and around the corner is the men's room. Out the door and to your right is the ladies' room. After Alan is done speaking is when he'll ask for questions. So in the gallery, please raise your hand. We'll ask Alan to repeat the questions for everyone on Zoom so that we can hear, and vice versa. If you're on Zoom and you have a question during the presentation, please type that and she will let us know if there are any questions from Zoom. On Zoom, you will be muted, so please try to keep yourself that way. And we will be able to see you in the venue. We have a big screen over there, and we'll keep an eye on you, so you need to be on your best behavior. We will be watching a video, that's why we have the screen in here. And after the video is done, I might move it to the back, so I apologize if that's a little distracting. So with no further ado, I'd like to introduce Mona Rieger, who will be introducing her speaker.
If you can't hear me on Zoom, just let me know, or let somebody know. So you may or may not know, but the Jewish Federation of Greater Orange County is considered a small city federation. But what I know, and what many of you in this community, this room here in our community know, that we are a community with a lot of hidden gems and a lot of amazing resources. And we are so lucky to have one of those gems with us today. Alan Levine is a senior counsel at Cooley LLP. For 40 plus years, Alan has represented individuals and companies in complex civil, criminal, and regulatory matters as lead trial counsel. He has successfully tried numerous civil and criminal cases and appeared in federal and state courts throughout the country. Alan graduated from New York University School of Law, where he was a member of Law Review. He earned his BS from the University of Pennsylvania. A fellow of the American College of Trial Lawyers, Alan has repeatedly been recognized by his peers, having been asked to assume leadership roles over his career in the American College of Trial Lawyers, the Legal Aid Society, the American Bar Association, and the New York State Bar Association. From 2007 through 2010, he served as chairman of the board of the Legal Aid Society, the largest public law firm in the United States. In 2000, he was called upon to represent the federal agency Legal Services Corporation in a landmark case involving federal legal services funding, which he argued before the United States Supreme Court. Alan has long been active in civic and community affairs. He is currently the chairman of the Board of Trustees of the Jewish Theological Seminary. He also serves on numerous boards and committees involved in the administration of justice, including the Legal Aid Society and the Historical Society of New York Courts. And then I have a list of all of his awards, and he said, don't read them. So I won't, but if you want to know, come see me afterwards. Alan is leading the Cooley LLP litigation team as one of the counsel in the Sines et al. Versus Kessler et al., which is a federal civil rights case brought in the federal court in Charlottesville, Virginia, arising out of the violent demonstrations by white nationalist organizations in Charlottesville on August 11th and 12th, 2017. It is currently scheduled for trial on October 25th, 2021. How lucky are we to have him here today? Alan is the son of Lawrence and Jack Levine, Federation founders. He is the brother of Harold Levine, for whom our endowment program is named, and the brother-in-law of Carol Levine, who put this entire event together. Alan Levine.
So the last time I was in Newburgh, the Middies, we were playing NFA tennis in 1966. But more important, I'm very fond of this organization. I remember sitting in our dining room or dinette while my mother created this organization because she wanted Jews in the county to be able to talk to one another and synagogues to work together. I know it took her a bunch of years to get this off the ground. And then, of course, she was president at a certain point, and my brother, who started this endowment program, and we still support this organization. So I'm not coming from New York up here. I'm like, this is home for me. So when Carol asked me to do this, it was easy to say yes. We've actually been doing this around the country. So this is the fourth or fifth maybe Jewish group that I've had a chance to talk to. Because we're combination live and Zoom, which is a refreshing change, I must say. I'm going to start by introducing you all to one of the principal organizations that was responsible for all of this, just so that you get a taste of what's going on in America today and what our case is about. So you're going to hear a speech by a guy by the name of Dr. Michael Hill, who is from Alabama and who is founder and president of a group called League of the South, which is an organization in about 15 states that's devoted to Southern white nationalism and advocates the South seceding from the Union, sending all of the Jews back to Israel, and creating a Jim Crow status for the Black population in this country. Let's get a flavor of this guy and what went on in Charlottesville. Watch this video.
Items to the flame, into the ovens of justice. One is this insidious star of Remphan, the symbol of the Jew. The second is the Communist Manifesto, written by Jew Karl Marx, which was responsible for the deaths of over 100 million people in the 20th century. And the Talmud, the blueprint for international Jewry's plan to rid the world of the white race. All of these will be consigned to the flames of justice tonight. 109 times in the history of the world, the Jew has been banished from our midst. Lord, we ask that you make number 110 come soon for our Southland. And we also, Father, ask you to reveal to the world that hoax that the Jew has been perpetrating now for 80 years, something called the Holocaust, which is nothing but a con game based on all three of these symbols. We consign these to the holy fire of these ovens for the Gentiles of the world. We stand for the white race against all of our enemies, particularly the Jew, and all of these symbols represent that enemy. And we consign them to these flames tonight.
This was in Tennessee in the spring 2018, less than a year after the Charlottesville events. So Dr. Hill, in the spring of 2017, sent out a message to the League of the South chapters around the country that said, quote, "If you want to defend the South and Western civilization from the Jew and his dark-skinned allies, be at Charlottesville on 12 August. And with that, the rallying cry went out. And the events of August 11th and 12th, I'll now tell you about. Just by way of a 2-second background. In early 2017, the Charlottesville City Council finally decided that it would remove the Robert E. Lee statue from one of the parks downtown. And the nationalist population, the white nationalist population, wanted to demonstrate against that. And they had a small event in May that they concluded spontaneously with a white torch, flame torch march a la KKK. And it was very successful, and they had speeches. It was so successful, the local KKK chapter in July marched through downtown Charlottesville. Both of these marches going by Temple Bethel, the oldest synagogue in Charlottesville, scaring the hell out of them. And one of the people that participated in all that had the idea to bring the whole white nationalist community in the country together for a really big rally on August 11th. Got a permit, sat down with the police to get protection, and on the internet, behind the scenes, planned this enormous rally on the 11th and the 12th with intentions of violence, all about the white nationalist credo and philosophy of anti-Semitism and anti-Negro. Had nothing to do with the statute. A la Mr. Hill's message, if you want to defend the South from the Jew and his dark-skinned allies, come to Charlottesville. So the Friday night, August 11th, they convened in one of the university's fields and had a tiki torch march, over 300 people. And they did not go from the field to the Thomas Jefferson statue. They went from the field all the way up to what's called the entry of the lawn and marched down the lawn. Now, the lawn is the historic original quadrangle designed by Thomas Jefferson with dorm rooms along the lawn, leading up to the rotunda, which is about 30, 40 steps, and then down the other side to Thomas Jefferson's statue. The planners sat with the police, told them all about the Saturday speeches, got permits and police protection for the Saturday speeches, and lied and never told them about the Friday torchlight rally because they never would have gotten a permit for it. They ended up telling the cops around dinner time Friday night. Some students locked in arms around the Thomas Jefferson statue. And at about 9 o'clock at night, these 300 men in formation, in uniform, khaki slacks, white shirts, lit flammable torches, started chanting, "Jews will not replace us. You will not replace us. Into the ovens, blood and soil." That's what these some 300 people chanted walking through UVA's campus, up the steps, down into the rotunda, where the 300 men attacked these 25 students, throwing canisters of flammable liquid on them, mace, everything. Within minutes, it was declared an unlawful assembly, and the alt-right, the nationalist left, declaring victory, went on the internet, greatest night in the history of the movement, and all showed up Saturday morning. Dr. Hill's chief of staff led a column of about 200 down Market Street through Charlottesville on Saturday morning to go to this Emancipation Park where there was going to be all of the speeches, including a speech by Dr. Hill. And at the entrance to the park were some counter protesters who were standing arm in arm, not to be deterred. The League of the South group and their supporters with poles, shields, mace, went right through the counter protesters. Obviously, violence ensued that they wanted. Unlawful assembly was declared. Everybody scattered, different speeches here and there. Bunch of counter protesters were gathered at the end of what's 4th Street, and one of the marchers who drove 12 hours from northern Ohio to Charlottesville saw an opportunity and took his Dodge Charger and drove down the street to where he could see them, backed up, and then pressed the metal and drove into the protesters, killing a woman by the name of Heather Heyer, who was working as a paralegal in a law firm, and injuring a dozen people. Those are the events of August 11th and 12th. All the major alt-right organizations were present, and all of the spokesmen for the white nationalist movement were present. And I was sitting in shul the last weekend in August out in Bridgehampton, and a lawyer I know for years, Robbie Kaplan, who did the case for Edith Windsor in the Supreme Court, was whispering to me about Charlottesville and that she was thinking of bringing a case arising out of this violence. I said to her, if you do that, I'm in. And she said, you'll do the Nazis for me? And I said, couldn't think of a nicer group of people. And so my law firm signed on. We were the third law firm, and the three law firms together filed the case in October. It's only about 110 pages long as a complaint. It names a dozen individuals and all of the organizations that were involved. The plaintiffs are about 10 people that were physically injured from the car attack and others events. And the underlying, the law that we're using is appropriately called the Ku Klux Klan Act of, I think it's 1865. And it makes it a violation to conspire together with racial animus to attack and to intimidate others from exercising their constitutional rights. And so this case is about this group of white nationalist organizations and leaders who planned violence with the purpose of intimidating Jews and Blacks from exercising their constitutional rights. We have, working 4 years almost, tens of millions of dollars of legal work. We're going to trial. We're actually going to trial live with a jury in the federal court in Charlottesville 3 weeks from tomorrow. And we have about 40 witnesses, including some of these perpetrators who we've subpoenaed. Mr. Hill is one of my favorites. Dr. Hill, excuse me. I'm going to be cross-examining Dr. Hill. I spent a day on Zoom in June a year ago, taking his deposition. I told him those were my books he was burning, just so there was no mistake about what was going on. And he's a bad guy. And his chief of staff, Michael Tubbs, is another defendant. He's about 6'5". He looks like a tough guy. And he was in the Army. He was convicted for selling and harboring firearms to use against synagogues in North Carolina, and did about 10 years, I think, in the federal penitentiary, came out and joined Dr. Hill in the League of the South. So much for rehabilitation. So our plaintiffs are just one's a minister in the town, one is a UVA student, one was office mate of Heather Heyer, a couple were UVA students, and they were at the demonstration because of what had happened in May and July. They wanted to stand up and show them that the community didn't like this. And so there were a lot of counter protesters that were there. Of course, the white nationalists set up the boogeyman, if you will, that they were going to fight Antifa. And the whole language that they adopted was, we're going to battle against Antifa. But Antifa, there's no such organization Antifa. Antifa is a point of view, if you will. It's not really organized in the way that these groups are. And there were some people that associated with Antifa that were there to defend, if you will, defend their right to be there. When the then President Trump at that famous news conference was asked about Charlottesville and commented there were good people on both sides. I had just starting to get familiar with this, but as I've become just immersed in these facts and these events, there's nothing could be further from the truth. I want to just give you a sense of some of the more of the virulent anti-Semitism that's actually in play here. You saw this from Dr. Hill, but another group is called Vanguard America, organized out of Texas, also an association of state chapters. Their website is bloodandsoil.org. For those of you not that educated in Third Reich literature, Blood and Soil is Blut and Boden. It literally means blood of the soil. It's one of the Third Reich's rallying slogans, and it is as classic Third Reich as you could possibly be. So that's the website of Vanguard America, and that was the chant. One of the chants is very telling of what these people are all about. Dr. Hill said right after August 12th, defending himself on his website, he said, "We see ourselves at the heart and soul of the hard right, an uncompromising movement of real blood and soil, Southern white nationalists who will not compromise our vision of a Southern homeland for whites. To us, Dixie is and should be white man's land. We are firm on the Negro question and the Jew question, and we make no apologies to anyone for what we believe or what we seek to accomplish for our people." So, the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, Mr. Bowers, a devoted reader of League of the South. The Poway Synagogue shooting also has derivations from some of the organizations and literature from Charlottesville. As my rabbi said several months ago, there is a straight line from Charlottesville to January 6th, and make no mistake about it. I wanted to talk to you about a couple of interesting issues that play a role in this case, just to give you a sense of some of the things that we're up against. Number one, we got the internet chat room data, if you will. We got it in screenshots of the chat room that was used by all the organizers, through an informant shortly after the event, we got a couple hundred pages of screenshots of all of them talking to one another and planning all of this. And the reason why our complaint is 110 pages long, it is because we actually quote paragraph after paragraph from April of 2017 up through and including August 12th, 2017, what they were saying and doing. And they planned on violence. They planned on violence, and they planned on the weapons that would facilitate that violence without hopefully using guns. Now, it's an open carry state, Virginia. A lot of them were concealed carrying. Dr. Hill had his gun on. And having said that, they wanted to create the defense of self-defense, a la Trump's comments. So they used poles, flag poles, which they said they could then use as sticks. They made shields. The League of the South had about 20 shields made to order with their emblem. That they distributed to the group of marchers in the front. They all had, a lot of them had helmets on. And they openly discussed how these different items could be used to attack, and how they then would have preserved the argument that this was all self-defense and no one was shooting anybody, et cetera, et cetera. The kid that drove the car on this internet chat room over the 2 months before the event were jokes. They all say it's always jokes, pictures of cars and trucks mowing into people. And the description that that's a good way to clear pedestrians. So it was no surprise that these defendants are going to argue that they didn't know this kid driving the car, Jim Fields, he wasn't one of them. He just did this all on his own. It wasn't part of the conspiracy. And we are going to show that there was instigation on these chat rooms to use cars as vehicular weapons. And this fellow Fields marched with the Vanguard America people that I just told you about from Blood and Soil. He had their uniform on. He had their shield. I went to Louisville, Kentucky 2 summers ago to take the deposition of this guy, Dylan Hopper, who was the head of Vanguard America. And he told me how they didn't know Mr. Field. Mr. Field wasn't a member of their group. He was acting on his own. But in the beginning of the deposition, and lawyers here will enjoy this, the beginning of the deposition, when I asked them to describe Vanguard America, I established that they have no roster of members. They don't have any membership tests. They don't really know each other. They all use aliases. They've never really gotten together. They wouldn't know a member from another member. And so we have all of that evidence for when they're now going to claim that Mr. Fields, who was there in the uniform of Vanguard America with a shield with the Vanguard America logo on it, just somehow fell out of the sky to show up. But there's huge fight in this case over the issue of self-defense and over the issue of Mr. Fields. And one of the really challenging parts of this case is going to be to convince the jury that Mr. Fields joined this conspiracy and that his act of driving that car was in furtherance of the conspiracy. And I think we have really, really good evidence about that. The other really interesting issue, and it gets a little into politics. It's kind of interesting. The Ku Klux Klan Act makes it a violation to conspire together for racial animus to do violence to people. It excludes, it's never been held to include animus against a political group. It's been held not to include animus towards abortion rights advocates. So the statute has really, over its years, been kept to the language of racial animus, and which is essentially religious animus and racial, black, white animus. The defendants call their adversaries Antifa, which is a political idea. And a lot of their rhetoric is how this wasn't really about Blacks and Jews. This was about the statue and the Confederacy and Antifa and the political fight that we all know is going on all over this country. So we had a motion to try to throw our case out by Dr. Hill's lawyers. And I had to argue this point to the judge that Antifa really wasn't the adverse party here. The anti-Semitism and racism was really, it was for the jury to decide who was right. And not surprising, the judge didn't throw our case out and we're going to trial in 3 weeks. But these groups since Charlottesville have changed a bunch of their messaging so that now if you go and listen to Dr. Hill, the commies are the enemy. The problem is the facts mess him up, because you saw in this video, we're the commies. By the way, in this country, in the white nationalist group, and I grew up, this is a great Republican county. The Jews are commies. We're all commies. We're all a product of Marx. So when they use commies, it is what do they call it? Dog whistle. It's a dog whistle for the virulent anti-Semitism of the Third Reich. But we are going to be faced throughout this trial with the defendants claiming, there are some Jews I don't like. There's some Blacks I don't like, but this wasn't about racism and it wasn't about anti-Semitism. I think what's really hard for the defendants is Friday night, because Friday night had nothing to do with speeches. Friday night 300 some odd people with torches, a la KKK, chanting only four things, all anti-Semitic. Jews will not replace us. You will not replace us. Blood and soil, and into the ovens. So it's going to be an interesting part of this trial, and it's larger political subtext, if you will. But I don't think there's any doubt that this case is all about virulent anti-Semitism in the United States today. I think I just tell you about a couple of witnesses that are interesting. We are offering expert testimony on what anti-Semitism means, what its symbols are, how it's manifested in the country. Hopefully, our principal witness on that subject is Professor Deborah Lipstadt from Emory. She has submitted an expert report, and she will testify to how the white nationalists talk, how they use jokes to cover the substance of what they're thinking and doing, how they use Nazi symbols. All of the posters, all of the posters, advertising the posters, the eagles, the swords, what the 14 words mean. These 14 words are a statement of white supremacists, and 88 stands for Heil Hitler. So my friend in Kentucky, Mr. Hopper, his email address is Dennis1488. And he said, when I got into what the 14 stood for and what the 88 stood for, it was a joke. It was a joke. Everything went fascinating when you confront these people with all of the bluster. When a Jewish lawyer is asking a Dr. Hill, are you an anti-Semite? No, I'm not. It took an hour of cross-examining him, confronting him with material that he had written and published, for him to finally admit to me, yes, those are my words. Yes, that's what I believe in. So they don't, and they all live in an anonymous world. They use aliases. They very rarely, if ever, go by their name. When Dr. Hill is an exception because he's the lead person here. And Richard Spencer, who's a defendant, is an exception. He uses his name, he's a very public figure. But these other people all go by aliases. So that's our expert in anti-Semitism. We found a Jew of color. She was a rising senior at UVA, had been elected to live in the lawn in one of the dorm rooms. It's a very competitive thing. She's the product of a Jewish mother and an Indian father. She's actually identifies as a Jew on campus. She was in her dorm room, 10 yards from the march down the lawn, and was rescued by one of the deans that night and taken to another area, went up on the roof and had a video that she did on her phone from a creak in the door as they were marching by. She's going to be one of our first witnesses. She graduated from UVA. She did Teach America in Tulsa. I've had a wonderful relationship with her over the 4 years, and she's coming to testify. The plaintiffs that were injured, obviously, are all testifying. The dean of UVA is testifying. So, and there were a lot of videographers. There's a lot of the video on the internet of these events, and some of them are testifying to authenticating what was done. So that's the kind of proof we have. Those are the charges. That's how the case came about, and that's some of our personalities. I can talk about this case obviously for days, weeks. This has been a fun exercise for me at the tail end of my trial career. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I think that's about, yes, that's about, okay.
So you said there is a lot of video. Are you aware of any video that would bolster the defendant's case that the counter demonstrators created violence?
There are videos of both sides. Oh, yeah. So the question is, are there any videos showing that the counter demonstrators engaged in violence? So be very careful with the words here. There are videos, we're going to play some, of the two sides fighting. The violence was initiated by the League of the South, and they admitted it to me in the deposition. And I also showed Dr. Hill a video of 3 of his or 4 of his members pushing a woman to the ground. And every time she got up, they pushed her to the ground, and then they maced her. I made Dr. Hill watch that. And I asked him whether his League of the South members were engaged in self-defense. He said, no, on that instance, I agree with you, they weren't. Then I showed Tubbs a picture of 4 men with sticks and shields beating up a black man on the ground of the entry to a garage later in the afternoon, beating the crap out of him. And I asked them, and Tubbs, who's one of the defendants, was standing watching. And I showed him a picture of himself watching and asked him why he didn't take any steps to stop that from happening. And he said, well, something like that kid had hit one of our men before, which I don't want to get into too much evidence, but it's a bit of an overstatement. The couple of people that committed that assault pled guilty or were convicted, and the kid who was supposedly hit, that was nothing. The government declined to prosecute. So there's footage, but they're going to have a very hard time getting around all of the discussion of the plans for violence and then the initiation of the violence. Yes.
If things go the way you hope and the verdict comes down the way you anticipate, what do you anticipate as the consequences for the defendants?
So it's a civil case. The question is, what are the consequences if we win, the plaintiffs win? It's a civil case, so there's no jail at the end of this, where this case was not brought by the Department of Justice as a criminal case. It's a civil case. We hope to get dollar judgments against the individuals. Our reading of the federal bankruptcy law is that a money judgment arising out of this violation is not dischargeable in bankruptcy. And so if we're right about that, and I think we are, then these money judgments would sit around the neck of these people for a very long time. We thought at one point that there was some group maybe financing all of this. We haven't found evidence of that yet. Yes.
Since the complaint is about conspiracy and the individuals that you have recorded chats with are using aliases, how can you bring a charge of conspiracy against a fictitious person?
All of the defendants have admitted in the depositions to the aliases. It's connected up very well. Yes.
The quote gentleman that calls himself Dr. Hill,
Mhm.
Dr. Okay.
He has a history, a British history PhD from the University of Alabama.
Thank you. I don't know what to say about that.
And actually, Dr. Hill taught for some time at a black college in Alabama.
This was the only job.
When he was outed, he left there and is now the paid president of League of the South.
Paid by news,
League of the South. They pay him. They pay him to be.
but they collect news.
Yeah, well, then, yeah, collectors,
But there's no.
yeah, from all over the country, League of the South. Yes, yes.
So who was the president referring to when he mentioned there were very fine people on both sides? Who were those very fine people?
The counter protesters, which he believed were Antifa, and some non-Antifa that were just students. He put everybody on the other side in one bucket and the alt-right in the other bucket, and those were the two sides. So the part about the comment that's troubling to somebody like me, having been immersed in this case, is referring to anybody in the defendant's crowd, alt-right people that attended, as good people. There's nothing foul, they're foul people. So, yeah.
Yeah, does the Ku Klux Klan Act require proof of conspiracy?
Yes.
Specifically?
Yeah, that needs two people. But here, at least two people. Here, there are issues that we have to prove of the planned violence, but often you have difficulty proving a conspiracy case because the people that you want to charge as conspiring together don't really sit together, and you don't have actual evidence of them talking to one another. You know, I spent a few years early in my career as a federal prosecutor and did drug cases. And very high-level drug cases, the guys at the top aren't sitting down talking with everybody. And I did some organized crime cases, and the people that lead the Gambino family don't generally have meetings where there's a tape running. This case is different, interestingly, in the sense that we have this chat room evidence. And after we got all of the screenshots, we went and subpoenaed Discord and have gotten production from Discord of the real reels. And the defendants, at least the couple of lawyers, some of these defendants are represented by themselves and some of them have lawyers, are stipulating to the authenticity of that internet chat tape. So we have them admitting who they are. and talking to one another, planning everything. Yes, ma'am.
Is the trial going to be held in Charlottesville?
Yes.
Are you concerned about the jury?
I love juries. I believe in juries. Whoever sits in the jury box, I'm happy to have. The jury pool is mixed in Charlottesville. So it's, that area has different pockets like any area in this country. Well, take the jurors, I love jurors.
Do they look?
When jurors, my personal experience is when anybody goes in the jury box and puts up his hand and takes an oath, they pretty much live up to that oath. I've learned of very, very few instances in my career. Pardon?
Watch out the defendant's lawyer.
There are a bunch of them. They're good folk, good lawyers.
But this is costing their money.
Yeah.
This is costing the defendants.
Yeah, they're not paying their lawyers anything like what we get paid, but my law firm has done this all pro bono. There's a funding organization, and the only thing they're actually paying my law firm for is our hard costs and travel costs and stuff, and security. So we're gonna have security there, but we've given all of our time to the cause. Yes.
My question is, the slogan, Jews will not replace us. Can you explain to everyone what that refers to?
It's essentially it's an immigration, it's replacement theory politics. That the white American of white nationalists and Southern nationalist view believes that Jews are taking over or have taken over their country and are essentially displacing them. It animates the anti-immigration viewpoint of a lot of the people of that point of view. And so it's Jews leave. It's why I did a deposition of the guy that organized this event, Mr. Kessler, a UVA graduate. He's the guy that knew to walk not in a straight line to the Thomas Jefferson statue on Friday night, but to go like 400 yards out of his way so he could come down the lawn and desecrate the Thomas Jefferson lawn. And I asked him what white nationalism was about. And he said, this country is for the white Europeans that founded this country.
Yeah.
So we were sitting this close. So I said, Mr. Kessler, Europe's big. There's Western Europe, there's Eastern Europe. A lot of Eastern Europe white people that came to this country from like 1880 to 1920. I'm not talking about your kind, Mr. Levine. I said, they're here. No, they should go to Israel.
So
Yes.
worst case, you don't convict,
We don't win.
and what happens, public relations?
I worry that these groups feel validated. I worry about more Tree of Life synagogue shootings. I worry about more hatred on the internet, in public, out of some congressmen, congresspeople. The case has had, in some respects, a smothering effect on this movement. Some of the dog whistle language has changed, as I said, now commies. On the other, and I felt very good about that. And the first anniversary after Charlottesville in August of 2018, the New York Times had a piece on the front page about just that subject, that point of view, that the outcry over all of this had kind of dampened all of the white nationalist behavior. And then you had Catholic, and then you had the Tree of Life. So I think this is a struggle that we're all engaged in forever. Yeah.
Following up on what you were just saying, the statue has now been taken down.
Yeah.
Correct. At the time that it was taken down, were there protests at that
There was
time, or is that
there was
pretty
some little stuff. I think there was maybe even more in Richmond when they took it down. Oh, I'm sorry. The question was whether there were demonstrations when they took the statue down. So there was some, but not of this magnitude.
There's a question on Zoom.
Okay.
Was there or will there be a criminal case, especially against the guy who killed Heather Heyer with his car?
The guy that killed Heather Heyer was convicted of murder in the state court 2 years ago and is serving a life sentence. And we have kept him as a defendant in our case. Yes.
I assume the other side's giving you a list of their expert witnesses. What are they like?
They haven't really.
They have no expert witnesses.
They haven't qualified anyone as an expert yet. There's no expert report that they've submitted, which is required by the federal rules. So they have a couple of people that we think might try to do that, but yes. Abby, did you have a question, Abby?
Yes, I do.
Oh, okay, yes, yeah, I'm sorry.
So you have alluded to the connection between Charlottesville and January 6th. Where do we go from here?
I don't know. We all have our own views. We all have our own views, right? I mean, it would have been really good if this case were brought by the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division. That's what it's there for. It didn't. So one good thing would be if the government got aggressive about enforcing the laws. Both Republican and Democratic administrations for decades enforced these laws, brought this kind of case to enforce this kind of statute, to enforce voting rights statutes. So it would be good if we could get back to that.
Something interesting, it's very interesting to me, that the same techniques that you're describing using for your complaint weren't used and still haven't been used by the local police in Charlottesville.
I don't really want to comment about the police in Charlottesville. There was a report done, commissioned by the governor about the police's conduct during the 2 days. And it's an issue that may come up in the case, and I don't really want to talk about it.
More as conspiratorial
It's all,
position. It's not so much what happened that day, but they could have been looking and watching the internet.
yeah, I don't really want to comment on it.
Alan?
They, suffice it to say, Friday night was sprung on the police. The speeches on Saturday never took place. State police, UVA state police declared an unlawful assembly, and it never happened. But there's a lot of opinions and comments about what was done and not done, and I don't want to go.
Alan, we have a question on Zoom.
Okay,
Paula, can you unmute, please, and say what you have to say?
Yes, hi. Hello to you, Alan, and thank you very much for all this. And I still miss your dad very much. I just wanted to say that I think it's important for our community to come together to see how anti-Semitism is virulent in Orange County. We have legislators, executives, we have congressional representatives who went on the buses coming from Orange County on January 6th to wish them all well. We have had a demonstration by right-wing people against a small farm-to-table restaurant in Warwick, where they came to demonstrate against the restaurants requiring vaccination before coming in, and they wore yellow stars saying that this was a Nazi tactic. So I'm just really worried about Orange County, and I just want to bring it up. Thank you.
thank you. And thanks for mentioning my father. He would want to come to this trial and I would not be allowing him. With Paula. Anything else? I think I'm way over my limit, right?
We have more questions?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm just going to pass the mic over to Harvey, who has some closing words. And before I forget, because I didn't put it on your list, before you leave, we have some goodies for you in the back room. Please don't leave without taking some with you.
Thank you, Wendy. Hello, everybody. Thank you again to our featured speaker, Attorney Alan Levine. Let's give him another hand. I'm sure we all are invested in your success, confronting not even undercover, out in public hate speech. It's so important, regardless of what happens there. We really appreciate your time and effort. Today is the first time in over 2 years that the Endowment Committee has been able to host an in-person event. So it's really a pleasure to see everybody seated here today. And when I say everybody, I'm including 35 people that are here in front of us and 26 Zoom attendees that have signed on. I want to take a moment to talk to you about the Endowment Committee. The Harold Levine Endowment Program from the Jewish Federation of Greater Orange County has endured and thrived for a variety of reasons. You know, when I hear about what's happening nationally and then what we know has happened locally with hate speech, as our poster says, the Jewish Federation is here to build our Jewish community together, and the endowment program is here to ensure that it continues for our children and our children's children and thereafter. It's a very important building block to help us go forward. If you take a moment, those of you here today can look at the poster that's out front, which needs to be updated. It does not contain all of our named endowments. If you go online, they're all named there. We have approximately $4.6 million in our endowments that's helping the Federation continue the important work that's going on here today and ensure that it continues till tomorrow. There's over 54 named endowments.
No sound.
We can't hear on mute. We can't hear on Zoom. We cannot hear you on Zoom. We didn't hear. We didn't hear.
Sorry,
what
we
you said.
lost the last few minutes there. We were doing thank yous, but thank you all for coming. And we hope to see you in 3 dimensions soon.
We did not hear that.
You didn't-
Well, whatever.
How about now? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but we didn't hear anything Harvey said.
We were just doing thank yous and thanking everybody for coming, and we hope to see you all soon in 3 dimensions.
Okay, thank you.
Take care.